So my name's Josh Isenberg, and I would consider myself a front of house engineer first and a production manager professionally for touring national acts out of Nashville and the surrounding region. I don't know, I'd have to say, like, we used to grow up digging worms ourselves and fishing and camping all at the same time. So just not any one particular memory, but just the feeling of having a lot of those collective memories of spending time with my brother, my father, and having a lot of outdoor experiences that way. But just, I, when I think about my childhood, I just think about being quiet in the woods, and not necessarily one particular memory, but just the feeling that you get from being quiet in the woods, and the the extrapolation of that over the years. That's my memory of it. I had a friend tell me one time, like, the things that you're the most passionate about from like the ages of 8 to 15, you need to figure out a way to make a living doing those things, because that's when your heart's the most tender. You're the most apt to be open to new experiences, influences. You're learning what you like about the world and trying to figure out what those things are in that age. And you're the most passionate about the things that you find passion for within that age range. And for me, it was outdoors and music. That's the things that we had growing up. Music connection in childhood. So I had two angels on my shoulders. My mother is the quiet, conservative, Southern Baptist, Kentucky Christian woman that she is, that holds us all together. And my dad's a little bit more of the rough edge, backwoods, good old boy. So I grew up on Sundays going to church, asking forgiveness for all the sins that we did on Saturday with Dad. But it just a good, it was a good, well-rounded Southern education of all things. So I got Southern rock and roll, and I got country, and I got the tear in my beer country and everything between that, from Merle Haggard to Led Zeppelin from my dad. And then I got all of the hymnals and all of the tradition, bluegrass, gospel, all of that stuff from my mother's side. So having the two combinations of things, looking back on it now, it makes sense where I ended up, I think, given the fact that it took a lot of work and it didn't happen by accident. But because of those natural influences of the region I grew up in and the things that were just around us all the time, especially in rural Kentucky, I didn't realize at the time, but it was definitely setting the scene for what would come for me in my career. Well, banjo's a blessing and a curse. It finds you and you find it, but banjo is more of a birthright to me. I feel like it's it's an accumulation of my culture, and where I come from, I don't think there's more of a quintessential instrument. Maybe the acoustic guitar, banjo, or a mandolin, maybe, but banjo always stuck out as, like, if I really want to represent where I come from in my state in the most sincere, honest way, the ear comes to the timbre of that instrument, for sure, and everything that comes with it. So it's kind of just, I play it to tip the cap to my culture, and I always will for that reason. And I've never played for any intention of trying to have anybody hear me. You play for audiences and you play for yourself, and there are two different concepts behind that. And a lot of that's just more for me to keep a connection with where I came from, and that's what music does for all of us too. Backwoods rural culture, as far as just the 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 genuine, sincere gathering of people to. Yeah, Ohio County in Kentucky is a great example of this. There's a barn dance up there, the same birthplace of Bill Monroe. It's where he's buried. And Ohio County's not that far from where I grew up. And they have a barn dance down there, and have had for traditionally years and years and years. And the whole concept behind it is that they'll gather in the general store next to the barn where they play. They'll have their coffee, they'll have their pie, they'll have their cigarette, whatever. They'll sit around and figure out what tunes they're going to walk across the barn with and work up for the audience that showed up. The thought of that circle of people sipping their coffee, trading licks. That everybody's seen that, whether you're from that culture or not. That campfire mentality, I guess it would be, but in this instance, it was a general store and in the back of, an old coffee shop. But that picture comes to mind when you talk about encapsulating culture, because music and lyrics especially are stories, and stories are important to our culture. So the stories come from those songs, and those songs are our culture. They are, by definition, the culture that defines where you come from. That's why we always consider blues to be associated with Memphis or Chicago, and that's why, all of the things that come from where I come from are associated with that type of music, that type of culture. And in the same way that country music has with Nashville, is there's such a deep-rooted history in it that people like to talk about it like a family lineage more than they do just the history of music, about how this person played in this person's band and they got to know this person, and that there's a whole family tree of how it got passed down through. There's an energy. Some people would call it vibe. A vibe is short for vibrations, which is what we all live and breathe by, is vibrations. Our music is vibrations. Our speaking, everything is done through that. So it's inherently picking up on an energy that you can't necessarily put a finger on it. I struggled with understanding that value for a long time for myself, as well as being around other people. But you live in a world where you're constantly, everything is magnified, because you're living in small quarters together on the road. You're in a venue together all day. You're on a bus together all day. You're this or that. You're getting through airport. It really is building your pirate ship and filling it full of your pirates, and you're going to go out and conquer the world together. So having the right dynamic, having the right energy, having the right people on board that understand a lot of things that go unspoken, that are really important, just not just because they're unspoken, but just etiquette of being around people, understanding, having enough, having a proper amount of what we call emotional intelligence to be able to decipher social and professional situations from day to day, and from tour to tour, especially being able to read people quickly, being able to understand what they need from you and not give them any more, because we're all out there to do a job. We all have a certain amount of bandwidth that we can focus on. So you don't ever want to try to overload somebody with too much attention or too much energy, or it's just kind of learning how to learning how to coexist on a tour, learning how to coexist on a stage in a band. It's all the same way that you learn how to play with the other musicians. There's a push and a pull to it. And understanding that is what allows peace to be in the room. And that peace is what cultivates a good environment, a good vibe, a good music, good everything, is clearing out the noise so you can focus on what's important. And having a good team of people that understand that don't raise, we're talking audio, people that you bring around you that don't raise your noise floor. You want them to lower your noise floor so that the peace of mind is there, so that everything can come from a flow state. The music can come from a flow state. The musicians can play better because they're not stressed about the production. The production is being handled. And it's all this very symbiotic, delicate, fragile relationship and dance that you have to figure out. I know it feels convoluted explaining it, but that's really what it is in essence. Is the hang itself is learning how to work with and around and amongst everybody else that's there, understanding their energies, knowing when to match their energies, knowing when to leave people alone, knowing when something needs to be pushed, something needs to be pulled, all those things. And we can relate all of that to music, to audio, to playing together on stage, to working together on a tour. It's all that fluctuation, that yin and yang of learning how to coexist.
Yeah.
But I don't see myself as a tech person, and I think the social aspects of that, the dynamic of what I would consider to be emotional intelligence, is getting lost on a generation that's stuck in their phones. And even though I say that ironically, because most of the day to do my job, I am, of course, stuck in my phone. But doing it professionally and understanding where the cutoff is and understanding that music and what we do for a living, our industry is an industry of emotion, is what I refer to it as. When people ask me, how do you explain the music business to somebody who doesn't know, somebody who's not aware, it's an industry of emotion, bottom line. People are paying to come see you play because they are emotionally attached to something, or else they wouldn't spend their hard-earned money on a ticket to have one evening of bliss with the artist of their choosing, right? And we wouldn't have someone to play for if the audience didn't show up. So it's this cyclical love giving and returning back and forth the whole time, which is why the band plays better when the audience is hot and vice versa. Right? There's an energy exchange all the time.
Boy, you're making me think.
The complete absence of distraction. For one, obviously, if we're doing our jobs right, we're not being paid attention to during the show, at least. It's nice at the end of the show for people like yourself, that's how we met, to come up and be listening with intent for a certain sonic quality that we try to present every night. I feel like the better the sonic quality, the less people are distracted by what's happening in the room, that allows them to have a true emotional moment if they choose to. Those moments are not discovered, they're created, right? You don't walk into an empty hall and expect to just have an emotional moment with a situation or whatever have you. But that's why all the notes that we play or the notes that we're mixing, they're all important, and they're all equally important in a very high standard way, that because you never know what note is going to be played that's going to turn the key on the heart, so to speak, of the person listening. It could be the first note, last note, somewhere in the middle. You never know. So to complement but not distract from that performance as much as possible, having the levels just right to where you're not focused on, the voice is harsh, and all of a sudden you're distracted from the moment because you heard something that felt off to you. Well, that distraction takes you away from you feeling your own emotion, which is what you came subconsciously or consciously. You might not realize that's why, but when you boil the sugar down, that's exactly what it is. And understanding that from someone who grew up going to shows, looking for those moments, wanting to, I got to see, for an example, I got to see Merle Haggard's last show that he ever played at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. And I cried. It was because getting to hear the man that sang the songs that I grew up listening to, but not only that, getting to hear those songs from the guy who wrote them, and knowing that those were the songs that my father sang to us when we were in the crib, when we were in diapers. There's a mobile that was over my one of my niece's cribs that says "Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Star," and that's one of Merle's songs, one of his more famous songs. And so, having the history with that kind of stuff, I know what it is to understand the importance of those moments when you experience them yourself. So it's putting yourself in the audience's shoes every night, knowing that at some point, somewhere along the way, something that was done by that artist spoke to that person enough for them to get them in the building. That takes a lot of effort to do that. It takes a lot of emotion to do that. So it's why it's hard for people to fill venues these days with people coming out. And I know the economy is part of it too, but that's one of the reasons why I chose live concerts, because you can't always grasp that energy by listening to the CD, even though they try to. And a lot of people succeed. Not to say that it's not impossible to capture real energy that you're looking for in a studio setting, but why go to the live show at all if you could have the CD? people still do. So there's something there to think about. You know, they're going for that energy. They're going to be a part of a group of collective people that are looking for that same energy, that same effect from an evening with or an evening out with whatever music they choose. It's all about the mentality that you embrace it with, right? And we've seen every aspect of that in this business. It's a right brain versus a left brain idea, and that the industry, when you zoom out at it, seems left brain. It seems very technical, very analytical, very, you know, sterile in that aspect, especially in the digital world we live in now. And then the other side is the right brain, the artistic, the whimsical, the dreamer, all of those types of personalities. And I think loving both sides of that in their own way in this incarnation of what we do, it allows me to use both worlds equally, and it just enough of each for me to stay involved and happy with what I'm doing, because I can never just think about audio just technical, and you can't serve it if you think about it just artistically. You have to have some of both to make it work. So the answer to this question might be more surprising than what people think, especially someone who's not inundated with this, is architecture. I look at architecture. I come into the room, if it say it's a theater, any given theater or what have you, because you get into different venues, types, arenas, clubs, this and that, they all have different challenges to them. But just for the sake of argument, let's say a theater, because most of the shows we've been doing with Vince have been theaters in that aspect. I come in and look and see, are there carpet on the floors? Are the seats carpeted? Are they wood backs? Are they plastic backs? Is the floor concrete? Are the walls plaster? Are they acoustically dampened? Is there a balcony? Are there under balcony speakers under the under where they need to be? All of those questions cumulative to what is the PA going to do in response to the architecture of this room? So plaster is going to be a lot more bouncy. Anything like that is going to have a lot more reflections to it. Hard surfaces versus absorbent surfaces. And some venues are more treated than others. Some are more acoustically conscious of that. But you're also looking at theaters that are built around the turn of the century, that were built originally for non-amplified audience, right? Shakespearean theater. So in a modern world, we're bringing amplification into a space that is used to non-amplification. And therein lies the challenge, right? Trying to get articulation sonically in a room that doesn't want to accept it. With so many different reflections bouncing around, or getting a PA to cover up underneath the balcony or all the way in the back of the balcony, and all the things that come with that is definitely all things that are circulating in the back of your mind, especially when you walk into a new venue.